And Skubie, now we're going to look at the NFC North. The Detroit Lions had as much draft capital as anybody. They have used it quite well.
Oh, yeah. And then in terms of the quickest draft pick in the draft, it was probably the Detroit Lions at number 2.
Number 2, Aiden Hutchinson. Here's the card.
What? Aiden's available? Yeah, we're just going to send that email now. Great pickup by them when it comes down to a hometown kid, a runner-up in the Heisman voting, 14 sacks. I said it before, getting after the quarterback is in his blood because his father owned the Michigan sack record before Aiden broke it against Ohio State this college football season. And then when you look at what they did with Jamison Williams, they climbed up 20 spots to make a trade with the Vikings from 32 to 12. And they grabbed who I think is probably the best wide receiver in this class besides Garrett Wilson. He has a gear that other people
closing
can't
burst
reach.
You hear from defensive ends. He has a closing burst getting to the football. But Aiden Hutchinson, faster shuttle than Khalil Mack, better three-cone drill than Chase Young, faster 10-yard split than Myles Garrett. Complete edge defender and an A1 athlete. That's why a lot of people had him going 1 overall. He goes 2 to the Lions. Jamison Williams, also a first-round pick. Josh Pascal, who's been called a leverage demon, is a term I use, the skin cancer survivor. He's overcome some adversity. Kirby Joseph is interesting to me. Only a 1-year starter at Illinois, former high school volleyball player, and you see that in his willingness and his ability to break up passes. Long arms, 40.5-inch vertical. 4 picks for the Lions so far, and 4 guys you think can contribute right away to his team that Dan Campbell doing his darndest to get them to move up. Skubie, if we're looking and we establish that the Lions have the best draft class in the NFC North, and they should with the capital they had, who is second? And I'm going to go ahead and remove the Bears from the conversation because I think it's a 2-horse race between the Vikings and Pack.
It's got to be the Packers. The Packers did have a great draft in terms of what they were able to do at the defensive, and then you added on the offensive side with your wide receivers. Now, the problem was everyone's saying, why didn't they draft a wide receiver in the first round? Look at the Packers' draft history in terms of the second-round wide receivers that they've drafted. Aaron Rodgers has thrown plenty of touchdowns to Devontae Adams, a second-round wide receiver. Randall Cobb, a second-round wide receiver. Jordy Nelson, a second-round wide receiver. The Packers are great at finding second-round wide receivers.
And I'll defend them there.
And that's how it is.
They would have taken Christian Watson at 22. They get him at 34.
Yep.
So they end up getting Quay Walker, who's a terrific and reliable tackler. They get Devontae Wyatt, some very serious off-field issues, but if those are cleared up and the character concerns are alleviated, he is explosive off the line of scrimmage. The thing they needed in that receiving room was somebody to take the top off the defense.
Yeah.
They get it in Christian Watson. And then Romeo Doubs, a guy who caught 80 passes on 110 targets. That is a very high rate, at a 75% rate. Yeah, and once you get into day 3, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, some scheme concerns there. How well do they fit? So I would lean your way with the Pack having the better day 2. But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Vikings. They had severe needs in their secondary. They get Lewis Seen, who's a rangy, fast, excellent tackler. And they get Andrew Booth, who there was some production against him at Clemson, but we know coming from Clemson that he's a guy who can fit into any scheme, and his zone awareness is off the charts.
Andrew Booth is probably the best tackling quarterback in this class.
Well, sometimes out of necessity.
Yeah, exactly. And then Lewis Seen, when you talk about the second best safety, he was on that list as well. So they really needed to beef up that defensive backfield because the Vikings defense allowed the most passing yards and the second most completions to wide receivers this year. So they needed help in that regard. But they did it by moving 20 spots back. And quite frankly, Phil, I talked to you about this before the show, that trade that they made with the Lions. I think the Lions ended up coming out with the better end of this trade with how they did.
That was the one curious thing, the trades within the division, the Vikings helping out the Packers there at 34, allowing them to get a deep threat. But a Caleb Evans for the Vikings is another flyer they take in the 4th round, and then they get Brian Asamoah, a see-ball, get-ball edge defender. So those 3 teams all help their classes. God bless the Bears. Kyler Gordon, Velus Jones, some question marks around that. Jaquan Brisker I like, but safety not a position of need for Chicago. It seems like 3/4 of that division took a significant step forward. Chicago, not a lot of draft capital, but there are question marks about how they used it.
Yeah, exactly. So we're at this point where they've made a handful of picks. We're trying to see what it is they're going to do to help Justin Fields, because right now Justin Fields doesn't have much of that help. So I like the pickup that they made at wide receivers of Velus Jones,
but he's 25.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about this draft class. That COVID year ended up having us bring in older players than what we're used to seeing in your typical year because they had that extra year.
And again, they get two pieces of their secondary. Kyler Gordon was a need for them, the cornerback out of Washington. Jaquan Brisker, again, a good pick, but maybe not necessarily a fit for Chicago. So questions abound. Shouts to the Lions, Packers, and Vikings for all taking a step forward in this draft.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.